to right field, way up there, and way out of here!
The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you.
The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Phixated podcast. I am your host, Mike Azzalina, and I am joined again by a guy I would never trade in a million years. Chris Regensburg is back, baby. Welcome back, Regsy Boo.
Thank you, buddy. I missed you, of course.
Missed you too, man.
You're too kind. But you know,
how was vacation, man?
It was great. Obviously, you know, the line that when you take a bunch of little kids on vacation that you're really just taking care of them somewhere that's harder is true. Stuffing the 5 of us into a hotel room, you know, has its own fun built into it. But, you know, we did it. I spent a lot of time by the pool. I drank some drinks. I ate like crap. I loved it. It was didn't look at work email for 5 days.
Nice. Good for you.
Saw a baseball game, so it was great.
You might have seen one of the guys that got traded this week.
Who was it?
Did you see Sanchez? JDL in Clearwater?
Oh, I don't think so.
No? Okay.
Maybe. I'd have to go back and check.
I mean, he actually might have played. Yeah. He's been playing every day, so I'd assume.
Shout out to you guys for holding down the fort. Obviously, I popped in very quickly. I listened to the episode.
That was awesome.
You guys did great. Shout out to Joseph and Phil for jumping on and carrying the torch for us, or for me, not for you. But yeah, good stuff, man.
I mean, listen, you were gone, but I think like the people need to roll ducks from you.
Hey, I know I haven't been on since, you know, the champion. Or did we talk about it? I talked about it with Joseph and Phil. You
yeah,
did.
Yeah.
So anyway,
yeah.
Roll ducks.
Gotta love it, man. Gotta love it. 15-0, the perfect season.
Way to finish it out. I believed in you always, and to all the teammates out there who listen, congratulations.
Awesome. Well, we're happy. We're happy for sure, and we're happier that you're back to give a rolled ducks. I mean, I know that Joseph rolled ducks is appreciated, but it's become a tradition here from you on the Phixated podcast.
I'm happy I can contribute in my small way and just live vicariously through you guys. You know, my softball days are long behind me. But,
yeah, I get it.
You know,
I get it. Hey, so trade deadline episode tonight, Regs, and I'd argue with anybody that the best trade deadline of all time goes back to the 2007 Elizabethtown. I don't even remember we were the Sandlot, actually.
That's correct.
And that trade deadline, we acquired Jose and Eric on that team, both former baseball players, and having them change the entire complexion of our season.
Yeah, even though Jose's time was short-lived with us, I don't know if he made it the whole season, but he did. He came on at the end of the year. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
he was impactful in his short time with us.
Somewhere there's a picture of that team on social media.
So listen, this will come up in the Summit podcast when we get that started, but during our college days, and I know we're talking about trade deadline, so I'll be very brief, but GM Azzy in intramural sports, you know, is like nothing you've ever seen before.
Oh yeah.
Anytime
wheeled and dealed,
there was somebody coming off, you know, maybe wasn't happy with their real team they were playing for, scooped them right up, gave those older guys a run for their money from the day we stepped in the door. In all sports. They were not prepared for the squads that we would put together. And most of the times they were not happy that we were coming through and, you know, sort of raining on their parade.
Yep. That year, the Mount Joy, it was our sophomore year. That Mount Joy team had won what, every year,
Yeah.
their first
Yeah.
like 3 years, and we just build this team and beat them in the semifinals, and then we beat Cops team in the finals.
That's right. That's
And
how it
not
kind
just
of went
beat
for
'em,
every season.
ran through them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah,
You know,
for sure. And we
basketball,
did it in football. We did it in
yep,
basketball. Yep.
softball, soccer, all of the above.
It'll be a conversation. I mean, listen, a GM's only as good as the players that he puts out there, though.
Listen, you know, you inspired us, is what you
That's
did.
it. I mean, I did have some really good emails.
You put us in the best position, you know, to win, and that's what we did, and did a lot of it.
We did a lot of it. But I will go back and say that that's the best trade deadline of all time, right?
I'm with you. I think putting Luff at shortstop, a position.
Moved myself.
That's right.
Very
a position that I was just going to say that you know, had occupied, and you did the smart thing, and put, you know, in respects to, you know, the great Bill Russell, put the team first, and moved yourself to second base, I believe.
Yes, I did.
And kept Schmitter over there at third, the hot corner.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, man, we got it done. That kid could play some baseball, though. As kooky as Eric Luff was, and for those of you who don't know him, it would take too long for this episode to describe him. But that dude could play some baseball.
He sure could. He was very, very good.
Very good.
Yeah. Hey, you know who else was very good? Squirrel. Squirrel
Yep.
was a really good player too.
That's right.
Really good player. Really good player. We just had some ballers on that team.
We did.
That was I think that's the league we won most was softball. We won all 3 years.
We did lose football season.
We lost football junior year and we never lost basketball, but we split teams. So
yeah, right.
We always knew we were getting a shirt.
We were a
either
little
way,
staggered. That's right.
We were going to play each other in the we just didn't want to. We wanted to have some sort of competition.
Josh and Ryan had to be the cool kids and not play on the team and whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Josh and Ryan.
Whatever. All right, man. Well, look, it's our first sort of emergency / I don't know what you want to call it, like impromptu podcast. We're coming to
I feel
people.
Like the emergency pod is the right way.
Yeah,
to put
we're
it,
coming
right?
to people early this week.
Mhm.
The MLB trade deadline is over.
Yep.
The Phillies waited a long ass time to do anything, as we all waited collectively. But what we're going to do tonight is get into it, and we are going to let Mr. Azalina himself be, you know, our Sherpa through the trade deadline. So you're not going to hear a lot of Regz this episode. Besides, I'm going to just weave us, you know, through the episode. You're going to hear a lot from the smarter man in the room about all this baseball stuff. So to start us off, and for the people, what were you expecting from this trade deadline? Obviously, before anything happened, and then as a follow-up to that, how do you now feel that it's over?
Yeah, I think for me, Regz, like I talked about a little bit on our episode with Phil and Joseph the other night. I anticipated starter and center fielder. That those were the two needs that I anticipated happening. I didn't want what happened back in 2018 to happen. The Phillies were prime for a playoff spot and had needs all over the field. They definitely had the catching need because Alfaro was struggling. They had the shortstop need because JP had gotten hurt. Kingery was not playing well at all. And they definitely, every team needs bullpen help every year. But like the moves that Clentak went out and made just weren't good. Like he went out and got Wilson Ramos. He went out and got Asdrubal Cabrera. He got Aaron Loop. Somehow he had Justin Bour for no reason at all. Just wasn't enough to like put them over the hump. So what I was looking for in this deadline was like Dave Dombrowski's stamp to be put on it. And we definitely got that. We definitely got the stamp from him. And we found out, I guess my takeaway moving off of that is I got more than what I bargained for out of it. Dave Dombrowski's a lot better at his job than I initially anticipated. I knew that he was a really good GM. I knew that he was a good baseball mind and a good baseball man, but I think I had the wrong feel about who he's been throughout his career. Just the forethought, and I'll talk about this later in the show, the forethought to make the trades that he made over the course of the last week is just insane to me. The guys that he pushed off, in keeping the guys that he kept, the forethought and just the mindset that he went into this trade deadline with and meeting every single need that they had is, I still haven't wrapped my head around it. And we'll get into that. We'll dive into it. I think maybe a takeaway away from the Phillies, but not necessarily away from the Phillies, is that we don't have to deal with Juan Soto anymore.
So I want to get to that at the end. I want to get your thoughts on that.
I'm just so happy we don't have to deal with him. The guy's been like he's a thorn in everybody's side, but when you have to see him 19 times a year, it's exhausting. And now we'll see him like all of 7 times.
Well, yeah.
I don't even think actually we won't.
Let's just get your thoughts on that right now before we jump into all the Philly stuff. Because
sure.
I love talking to you about this stuff. You're the person I text all the time when stuff like this happens in the global Major League Baseball world.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that trade? I know you tweeted out when the Nationals put out their little poster of all the people they got for him. Mm-hmm. If you're not following at the Mic Drop 5, you should. But like, what were your thoughts about it? Why do you think the Nationals did this? And where do you see the Padres now, and where do you see the Nationals now? I know this isn't Phillies baseball or Philly sports stuff, but I think when a talent like that gets traded before, like, you might even say that his prime isn't even here, which is scary to think because he's so good right now.
Mm-hmm.
So what were your thoughts on the trade, and how do you sort of, I mean, it might be an obvious answer with how the Padres look right now, but also why the Nationals had to do something like this?
All right, let's start with the Nationals, because they won the World Series in 2019, I believe. I think it was 19. Yeah, it would have been then. And even before, like, Bryce was gone already. Mm-hmm. So they lost Bryce Harper. But then they lost Anthony Rendon, which honestly hasn't hurt terribly.
That one hasn't worked out.
He hasn't been great.
Yeah.
They traded Scherzer, they traded Turner, and then they trade Juan Soto.
And they had Schwarber.
And they traded him last year. And they traded Josh Bell today too, who's been phenomenal. But again, I know they know they're not winning, and that's fine. Trading Josh Bell was never in question this year. But the name, like, those Harper, Soto, Turner, Scherzer,
Rendon.
Yeah, and I'm not even going to put Rendon in this, but just because of what I'm about to say, those 4 are still like top 15 players in the game.
Yeah.
And they didn't keep them because they didn't want to pay them. So for me, like, again, if you're the Nationals, you're not winning a trade that you're sending Juan Soto out.
Yeah.
You're never winning that trade.
Right. Because who knows what those prospects are going to turn into.
Correct. He's 24.
Yeah, that's nuts.
He's 24. Not even. He turns 24 soon, I believe. You're right. He hasn't even entered his prime. He's got 2 years in San Diego hitting with Fernando Tatis Jr. and Manny Machado. So those numbers are only going to tick up. He'll be a Yankee in 3 years, or a Dodger, one of the two. But to me, okay, so here's the package they got back. Luke Voit, who's a veteran in Major League Baseball, was a Yankee, and that's fine. He is what he is. Jarlin Susana, he was a highly ranked pitcher in an international class. I don't remember the year that he was signed. But he's probably a name we'll hear again. James Wood, outfielder, I don't know, probably like 88th overall prospect. I don't know if that's organizationally. I believe he's San Diego's number 3 prospect, if I'm remembering correctly. I'm just looking at a list of names here in my notebook. Robert Hassel, another outfielder, number 1, I believe, on their team prospect list. Mackenzie Gore, who's a really, really good starting arm. He pitched for the Padres quite a bit this year, and was high up on that prospect list. And the Padres are loaded prospect wise. Mm-hmm. So like, and then CJ Abrams, who is their number 1. He's a shortstop, coming into the year. So did they get a lot of strong names from the pipeline? Absolutely they did. And this is what it was going to take to land Soto. How many of these guys will turn out? I have no idea. Could all 5 of them? Sure.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely, they could. They absolutely could. The likelihood of that, never high.
Right.
It's never high.
2 out of 5, maybe.
I mean, we know Gore's going to be really good.
Yeah.
He's already really good. If they get, if 2 of these guys turn into two all-stars, then they made out pretty well. But at the end of the day, you're just not winning this trade, and it's embarrassing for your franchise. On the other side of that conversation, the Padres are ridiculous. I mean, again, like the top of that lineup when Tatis is healthy is Tatis, Soto, Machado, Bell.
Yeah,
That's your top 4.
yeah, that's nuts.
It's absolutely
You don't even have to mention
wild.
Bell, and I'd be just as scared.
Yeah, right, right, and not to mention, because this gets lost in the shuffle of what happened today. They did add Hader yesterday.
Yeah, right. Yep.
They had the best closer in the game.
Yeah.
So they added the best closer in the game. They added the best bat at the deadline, and arguably a top 3 to 5 player in the game. And they added Brandon Drury today too, who is a really good player.
Yeah.
So now they're 10 games behind the Dodgers, so they're probably not catching them. But the Phillies were only 2 games behind them coming into tonight. I don't think
No.
Padres lost today. I don't think the Phillies are going to be catching them now.
Yeah, right.
They're definitely World Series contenders. I don't think the rotation's quite there, but they're going to hit.
Yeah, well, yeah.
They're going to hit. And I certainly don't want to see them as a Phillies fan, because Soto and Bell absolutely
Oh my
kill
God, they
the
just
Phillies.
destroy us.
And I mean, Machado hasn't always killed us, and Tatis we haven't really seen enough to know either way. But those 2 guys alone, and that lineup's just loaded.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely loaded top to bottom. So,
all right. Well, I love getting your thoughts on that, because I think when stuff like this happens, we have to talk about it. I know we're a Philly sports podcast, but deep down,
but that's just huge.
We are sports fans, and when
That's
stuff
just huge.
when stuff like this happens, we're going to talk about it. So I hope you all enjoyed that. All right, let's start running through the trades, and we're going to go in order that they happened.
Sure.
And then I want you to give us sort of your grade for the trade and how you see it impacting the team moving forward, positively or negatively, depending on who the players were. So, number 1, Edmundo Sosa for Jojo Romero. That happened a couple days ago, probably just a week ago or so, or a couple days ago.
It was over the weekend.
Yeah. So,
okay.
let's start with that one.
So I think I'm gonna just read off a couple of names to you here. Stubbsy, Bilotti, Nick Nelson, Munoz, Camargo. The reason I read those names is because they're very under the radar moves that Dombrowski made this offseason that have made an impact on the roster this year. Now, Camargo got sent down. He got sent to AAA when Sosa was acquired. But he had his moments. He flashed his moments this year earlier in the season.
He was on fire at the beginning of the year, like the only one who was actually hitting.
Yeah, had a couple of big home runs too early in the year.
Yeah.
But the other 4, I mean, Munoz has been pretty good since coming up, and Stubbs, I don't think we really even have. We've talked about him. Bilotti and Nelson have been fixtures in the bullpen in a lot of different roles throughout the year, and I think this is just another instance of that. So Jojo Romero, we all love the Red Bull smashing coming out of the bullpen. It was fun. It was entertaining. The guy is like a 7 ERA in the major leagues over his career. And I think that gets lost in him just coming out smashing Red Bulls and looking cool. But this is a 26-year-old absolute defensive stud. The clip you see flying around Twitter of him fielding a ball up the middle and hitting the umpire is not an actual reflection on who this guy is. It's hilarious, but it's not a reflection on who he is. This is the Phillies buying low on a guy they believe has upside of being irregular. In some metrics, he's a 2 to 3 win player. The offense is taking a step back. If they can unlock the offense, he's probably an everyday shortstop because the defense is that good. He's just a guy who's going to hit toward the bottom of the order. But for the rest of this year, he's going to be a speed guy off the bench. He's going to be a defensive replacement if they feel like they need one. He can play a little everywhere, but shortstop's the spot for him. So this isn't like This isn't going to be the knock your socks off trade. It certainly wasn't going to be the trade that everybody was talking about after today, but it's the type of trade that winning teams and winning GMs make, because what matters at the end of the day is defense and pitching. And what the Phillies did by adding him was add a top tier defensive shortstop. And if they swing and miss next year in free agency at shortstop, they have a guy who can start the year there until they figure out what they're going to do. Because he's that good defensively.
Yeah.
He is that good.
So how does this affect Stott?
I don't know that it affects him at all, because I don't think Segura's back no matter what next year, because they're going to want to use that $17 million elsewhere.
Okay.
So Stott's probably your second baseman next year, no matter what happens.
Yep.
Unless they really don't feel like they can start Sosa, I think that a lot of what Sosa's going to be doing over the course of the next month and a half and into the offseason is going to be working with Kevin Long on trying to figure out where that offense went. But I don't think Stott's your shortstop at all unless something crazy happens next year. He's played a lot of second base. He's going to move over to shortstop for the rest of this year just to keep him in the lineup when Segura's back come Thursday. But I have no inside sources. This is all just my opinion on this, but I feel like Stott is going to be your second baseman next year unless I'm way off on the Segura front. I just don't see them paying the guy $17 million next season. I cannot see it.
No, it's a good point. But
so
I think relevant to bring up when you sign a guy like that at shortstop.
Yeah, and I think, they'll look at him, they'll take a long look at him, and if not, like, he's the perfect guy to be your utility type of infielder, because he's so good glove wise, and that's what you need utility wise. And they still have depth with Camargo because he's got another year left on his contract. I look, it's not a trade anybody's going to talk about moving forward, but I give it a B minus, a B plus, a B minus at worst, just because I think it took care of. He's 26, he's a stud defensively, and they needed a defensive
I was going to
player.
ask you his age, so that makes me feel better about it. So that's good. All right. So we covered
buy low moment, baby.
I like it. So
can I read a comment from our Facebook page?
So that's what I was going to go into. Azzy put out on our fan page on Facebook. If you're listening out there and are not, following the fan page on Facebook, please do so. He put a poll out there. How do you feel the Phillies did this trade deadline? Different options you could choose. But he also asked for some comments, and he said that we'll read them out on the podcast tonight. So in between each trade, we're going to read out some comments from our loyal listeners and fans out there. So let's jump into the first one, bud.
Yeah, I'm gonna. So first, I'll give you a little recap. We had 16 votes. I gave the choices of I loved it, I liked it, it was meh, or what is this guy doing?
I love that meh is an answer.
How about it? Don't you love that? And someone voted meh too.
I love it.
So we had 80% say they liked it, 13% said they loved it, and 7%, which was one vote, said meh. But the first comment comes from Roger Regal. He's been a guest on the show, and he came out with something that sort of bounces off of what I had just said. Very solid, addressed all the needs, plus kept top 3 arms in the system, which we'll talk about then. Pitching and defense are key, and it got better. And I think, the Sosa deal is the first look at how it got better defensively, and the next trade is another look at how it got better defensively.
Right.
So,
well, thank you, Roger, for the comment.
Yeah.
And keep interacting with us. We appreciate it.
Sure.
All right. So next, all of these next ones happen today. So we're literally going through the past 12 or so hours.
Which I texted Regz through the entire time.
And I loved it. I love it when we talk about this stuff and we text back and forth. So next up, Brandon Marsh for Mr. O'Hoppy. So this one, I'm really curious to get your thoughts on, because O'Hoppy was an untouchable. If you're watching the YouTube video, my air quotes are in the air. And you guys even talked about him on the last pod as one of the guys that you did not want to see go in any of these trades if possible. You weren't opposed to it happening for the right situation. So how do you feel about this? It literally straight up 1-for-1. We get Marsh, we lose O'Hoppy. I'm very, very curious to hear your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, this is my favorite trade of the deadline. This is my favorite trade that the Phillies made this year.
Did you have wait before you get into it? I'm sorry. I know I was going to let you talk for a long time, but I have to ask this question because it popped in my head. Did you have to talk yourself into it? Was that your initial reaction? I want Azzy's initial emotional reaction first.
Yeah, I'll give it to you. I actually probably can find it via text message. Give me a second here. Because here's the thing. Let me start with Ohapi while I'm looking for this. I'm going to look through my message chain with my buddy Adam because that's where most of the conversation came to.
Another
Let me
guest
start
of
with
the
Ohapi.
podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Ohapi is he immediately became the number one prospect on MLB Pipeline for the Angels. Like immediately.
Yep.
Because they're in such a bad way prospect wise. But I think he has the potential to be an everyday catcher, right? Like there's no doubt about that. And he's a really solid player. Like there's no doubt that he's a really solid player. I think for me, and I've said multiple times that he was probably, when I look at that list of untouchables, he was probably the most touchable, I guess, for the lack of a better term. Just because catcher is such a position of depth for the Phillies. And they continue to be deep there. And I just don't feel like it was a situation where they couldn't afford to give him up. And in a 1-for-1, I'm actually fine with it. So I'm still looking through here. And honestly, I think my initial take was this guy was a top 50 prospect and he doesn't hit, was my initial take. The glove is insane. The glove is insane, but he doesn't hit. So what is it that they like about him and why should I like him? That was my initial thought. Well, one, he's not Odubel Herrera, and we're going to talk about that later. But I think one thing that I love about Dave Dombrowski is the mindset of like, I'm always going to look for a guy with control, right? Like I'm always going to look for a guy who's going to be here for a while, can help me long term.
5 years, right?
So there's going to be 5.5 years of
wild for
this
a
guy.
AA prospect.
Right. And here's so again, this is like a buy low moment because he has not hit in LA. And I there goes the light.
Oh, yes.
You wanted it. Yeah, and I've been charging it for like 4 hours.
I love it.
I've been charging it for 4 hours. That's the part that just drives me nuts. I just don't get it. So this is your ultimate buy low. But here's what's funny. This guy in 292 at bats this year, this cracks me up, is slashing 226. That's his batting average. 284 is his on base percentage. And 353 is his slugging. So his OPS is 637. But here's the thing. He's still got a WAR above 0. He's almost got a full game of wins above replacement.
That's nuts.
Because his defense is that good, Regz.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So for me initially, it was all about there's something here that they like. And if there's something here that a smart like president of baseball operations likes, then I just got to figure out what that is because I don't like the offense. I'm not going to lie to you, but you're going to have to spend a lot of time convincing me that this wasn't a long conversation that Dave Dombrowski had with Kevin Long.
Yeah.
And said to him, hey, can you fix this guy's 35% K rate? Like this guy struck out 35% of his at bats this year. Like, can we fix that?
Yeah.
Because he's also saved 7 runs defensively this year, which is insane. Like, it's 9 more runs than Odubel had saved. He was -2 in defensive runs saved. So I think for me, we have not seen a defensive outfielder like what we're going to see since Shane Victorino. And I don't want to take anything away from Matt Vierling because I think Matt Vierling's done a pretty admirable job out there. I think the plays that you see Matt Vierling have to dive for, or it looks like he's busting to get to, are plays you're going to see Marsh coast to. Once a top 50 prospect, and they asked Dombrowski today, what about the bat? Like, what that's got to be a concern for you because these are his numbers.
Right.
And Dombrowski's response was, "Our hitting people think that there's some fixes for him that are not very difficult." And I just want to point to Alec Boehm for a moment, because Kevin Long has been here for 7 months, and Alec Boehm is hitting 300. And I think, and again, I'm not saying that Marsh is going to come here and just all of a sudden be a 300 hitter.
No, right.
It might be next season that we see the results of Kevin Long's work with him. But you're not just a top 50 prospect for no reason. I know we've seen guys like this before who have come, who have gone, who have, fizzled out due to, bad coaching, bad player development, things like that. Well, if there's one thing we know about the Angels organization, it's that guys tend to go there and not be great if their names aren't Shohei Ohtani or Mike Trout, who are both generational players.
Right.
Other guys just kind of go and fizzle. So
Anthony Rendon.
Correct. This is a really out of the box move. It's not one that a lot of GMs would make. Marsh wasn't even a guy that I had heard on the block.
I asked you who he was.
You did. Here's another little fun fact that I think is important to acknowledge. He's younger than Bryson Stott.
Is that true?
Yes. Not by a lot. It's like months, if that.
But what does that put him at? 23?
No, I think he's still 24, but I think it's like a couple of months.
Yeah,
like,
okay.
But still, like, this is a guy who the development it's there. And I'd have to look back at his barrel rate, but it's actually pretty high when he makes contact. He does barrel up a lot of baseballs. Yeah. So it's about making more contact, because if you make more contact and you know how to barrel a baseball, that's going to turn into base hits. The more balls you make contact with on the barrel, it's just common knowledge that turns into hits.
Yeah.
So hopefully with work with Kevin Long, that changes. Here's what I'll guarantee you. You're getting really good defense in center field, and he's going to hit ninth. So
yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, right? Is that what are you replacing offensively? Odubel Herrera? You're not replacing.
Maybe a little bit of Matt Vierling.
Yeah. Okay. And I think Vierling's been great. And Fritz made a good point on High Hopes that they put out just this evening that I listened to in the first few innings of the Phillies game.
I didn't hear that. I'll be excited.
Yeah. That this is an opportunity for Vierling to play left sometimes and allow Schwarber to DH.
Yep. Same with Castellanos.
Yeah. And then you immediately improve your outfield twofold.
Mm-hmm.
So again, and I think your point with Boehm is really good, because I love the story or the quote that came out from Kevin Long about Boehm. He said, look, I was watching Goldschmidt, and Alec, so was Alec, and how Goldschmidt gets his foot down so early and then is able to react to things. That's what Boehm's been doing for the past month, and it clicked. Boehm didn't start the year hot.
Nope.
Right? He didn't come out of the gates like seeing Kevin Long every day and then hitting really well. Kevin Long continued to do his job and found something that clicked with Boehm. And like you said, it didn't take 3 weeks. It took a couple months. But look what has happened. And so that's what that guy's coming into, and I hope it can continue for him and he can find something that works. But I think just the defensive upgrade alone is worth it, because you're not replacing like an offensive juggernaut in center field.
I think the other piece, and I don't know how much this matters. I'm not in a major league clubhouse, but this is a left-handed hitter, right? And he's walking into a clubhouse with the likes of Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber, two, pretty good left-handed bats.
You could say
they're not bad. And a guy who I think has made really big strides this year from that side of the plate too, and Bryson Stott. And Long again kind of made some adjustments with him on not striding and just keeping wide and basically foot up, foot down type of stuff. And that's made all the difference for Stott. I think tonight he struck out for the first time in like 2 weeks or something like that. So again, I don't know how quickly it's going to happen, but I do know that this is a guy who's got he's been in the league what now 2 years, and he's got a WAR above 1 just solely basically on defense
alone. Yep.
So you figure out the offense, and even if this guy becomes a 240 guy and hits 12 to 15 home runs a season, it's a win hitting 8th.
Yeah.
I mean, and so I think this is going to be your measure of the deadline, right? Because you traded a top 5 organizational prospect for a guy that you're going to control for 5 years, who can end up being your center fielder for the next half a decade.
Yeah.
He's not going to be 30 for 6 more freaking years,
that's
Regz.
crazy. Yeah, that's nuts.
So, I mean, you're really looking at, this is your deadline measure, and I this trade to me is an A. At least looking forward, because I know a lot of people said, well, this guy was untouchable. Ohapi was untouchable, but we go and trade him for a guy who's hitting 225. I get the hesitancy and I get the pessimism around it. Like, I understand that end of it. But I think you have to look at the global picture of, we have not had an actual center fielder on this roster that can do what this guy does since Shane Victorino in 2012. It's been almost a decade. And I got to tell you, championships are won up the middle. Like, you have to be good defensively up the middle. Think about our greatest teams: Ruiz, Rollins, Utley, Victorino. That was the middle of the field. Those guys were all arguably Gold Glove winners. I'd have to look. I know Rollins won a Gold Glove. I'm pretty sure Shane won a Gold Glove.
Victorino had to have, right? At least one.
I don't know if Chooch ever did, because Yadier was there.
Yeah,
and I don't know that Chase ever did either. But they were both good enough at their respective positions. So, Stott has shown glimpses of being really good up the middle. I'm still banking on Trey Turner.
Yeah.
We know how good JT is. And this guy is legit good in center field. Just wait. I'm telling you, you're going to look at him and be like, oh, this is what we were missing. Plus, he's got a great beard, Regz.
He does. He does have fantastic hair also.
The hair game went up today.
Hair I will never have. That's for sure.
The hair game went up. All right. Before we move into the next trade, let me read another comment here. All right. From friend of the pod, Phil Gunther.
Oh, Phil.
He's giving the deadline a B.
Okay.
He said it's tough to see Ohapi and Brown go, who we're going to talk about next, Brown. But Marsh and Sosa are big defensive upgrades under team control. Syndergaard fills a need, and Robertson is a very solid addition to the bullpen. Still have our best pitching prospects in Rojas in the system. B. So we're going to talk about both of those things here soon. But he summed up pretty well what we just talked about. Sosa being up the middle, Marsh being up the middle, 2 huge defensive upgrades for a team who needed a lot of help defensively. And these 2 will be game changers in that aspect. Thanks, Phil, for commenting, buddy.
Thank you, Phil. So let's jump into it. Robertson for Ben Brown. Now, we all know Mr. Robertson's history with the Phillies.
Yeah.
And I texted you saying, I can't believe we brought this guy back after again, you could argue it wasn't his fault. Injuries happen. The guy, but of course the guy's been an absolute horse for all his time, and then comes to the Phillies and gets hurt and pitches 7 innings or something like that total. So let's hear your thoughts about this one.
So I know if you follow me at all on Twitter, you probably saw me absolutely ripping David Robertson last week when the Cubs were sweeping the Phillies, and he came in and just went like 6 up, 6 down in the 2 games that he pitched. And I'm just out there ripping him. I mean, absolutely shredding the guy for never doing anything in Philly, basically never pitching in Philadelphia. And I got to tell you, like, the guy seems like a really nice dude. Like, he seems like such a nice dude. As a matter of fact, Meg Montemuro, who used to write for the Phillies, she was a beat writer for the Phillies for a while, is now a beat writer for the Cubs. And she asked Robertson when they were playing in Philly this past weekend, what would it be like to go back to Philadelphia after everything that happened? And she posted this quote today after the trade had become official, and the quote was what you'd expect from him. I know a lot of people there. It'd be great. It'd be nice to pitch there after being excited to go there previously, and my body just let me down. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, the guy was an absolute horse. I know plenty of Yankee fans who said that Girardi just threw his arm off. And he got to Philly, and that was it. I mean, he wasn't good when he first got to the Phillies, and turned out the reason he wasn't good is because his elbow and his forearm were in complete shambles, and he needed Tommy John. Came back this year to Chicago, and holy moly, 2.23 ERA in 40 innings. He's closed 14 games for them. Remember, they're not a very good team. I think they've won like 40 games so far this year. Strikeouts per 9, 10.8. Home runs per 9, 1. Walks per 9, 8. I'm sorry, hits per 9 was 10.8. Strikeouts per 9 was 8. And his whip is I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong year. I'm looking at 2019 with the Phillies. Let me rewind for a second. I thought those were high.
That's a lot of walks.
Yeah, that was a lot of walks. Home runs per 9, less than 1.
There we go.
Walks per 9, 4. Yeah, that's better. Strikeouts per 9, 11.
There we go.
There it is. Yeah, that's a lot better. That is a lot better. So I think for me, Dave Dombrowski didn't think they were getting a starter. He said that today. We'll talk about that in a little bit. He did not think they were getting a starter around, I think he said like 4:00 today. Yeah. So he went and he got another reliever to try and stabilize the bullpen a little bit, make it a little deeper. And I think, getting the sure arm that this guy's always been was something that they valued, and a guy that they could put into the back end to help stabilize that 8th, 7th, 8th, 9th inning was important. Let me read off some other numbers to you. Some ERAs: 1.99, 2.23, 2.05, 1.67, 2.59. Those are the ERAs of Brad Hand, Connor Brogdon, Sir Anthony Dominguez, Corey Knebel, and David Robertson. That'll be the Phillies' back end of the bullpen. And I know Knebel had a rough go tonight, but I don't necessarily put that on him. I think a lot of that was on the umpire tonight.
He's been pitching well the past month or so.
He has been pitching well, and he pitched really well this weekend in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Couple of numbers on Robertson that were posted today. I think Seidman posted these. So in 169 curveballs this year, opponent's batting average against curveballs, .064.
Well, that's pretty good.
So in 119 sliders this year, opponent batting average against that, .056. Slugging percentage against that, .222. Real quickly, let me go to the other side of the trade, because if you listen to our show last week with Joseph and Phil, I mentioned Ben Brown as the prospect I wouldn't trade outside of the top 4. Mm-hmm. Mostly because Phil took Johan Rojas and because Joseph took Hao-Yu Lee, but I had to have another guy. But I do like Ben Brown. A guy was drafted in like the 33rd, 34th round, something like that. Yeah. Had Tommy John, has become a pitcher that a lot of, people have liked. And I think for me, there's a lot of intrigue in him. I think that, the fastball flashes. He throws both a curveball and a slider, which is weird because like those pitches aren't like technically unique to one another, but apparently his is unique enough. He used to throw a split, but I think that's what ended up putting him in the Tommy John position. And essentially he was probably your 4th best pitching prospect. And 1-for-1 for a guy is fine. I think ultimately Ben Brown's going to end up being reliever anyway. So, if Robertson helps get you to the playoffs and maybe he comes back on another 1-year deal next year, team friendly because, what happened prior to, then this might end up being worth it. I think the question now is, how does Topper use him? And I don't know. Tonight he said he's not going to be the de facto closer, and he might close sometimes. He might not close. It's going to depend on matchups. And Topper's been pretty true to that. He's, when it gets late into a game, if it's the middle of the order and it's the 8th inning, Sir Anthony gets the 8th inning, and then they use Hand or Knable in the 9th. I think now the 9th is going to be Robertson's if that's the case. If you're going to be up at the top of the order in the 9th, then it's Sir Anthony.
Yeah.
But if you get to the 8th and you're facing 1, 2, 3 or 3, 4, 5 in a 1-2 run game, that's going to be Sir Anthony's inning, and Robertson's going to be in the 9th. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I actually think that's the way it should be. I'm not a big fan of the save stat. I think your best reliever should be the guy that faces the best part of the order when the best part of the order comes up in a close game.
Yep.
And I like this deal. I think this is a B+ deal. I like Ben Brown a lot, but ultimately, if you're not giving up one of those top 3 and you get what you could argue is a top 5 to 8 reliever in the National League this year, you do it. And I think Robertson was a guy that I think a lot of teams coveted, and Dave Dombrowski got the job done. So I think they use him basically as, he'll set up for Sir Anthony some games if that's the case, or Sir Anthony will end up being the high leverage guy, and Robertson will be the closer. But you definitely have insurance now. That bullpen just becomes really deep. With Hand, Robertson, Brogdon, Sir Anthony, and Knable, you got 5 guys that can come in and get outs when you need them now, and I think that's really important.
And it certainly
not
seems
to mention
like
Alvarado.
It seems like he has a great attitude. He really wants to come back and sort of prove himself. I think he understands what happened here, and is excited to come back and prove himself. Like, here's what you guys should have had. You know, the injuries obviously let me down, but here's what you should have had. So, and we didn't even, that's not even talking about Alvarado and you get Coonrod coming back soon. I mean, that bullpen has some stuff. Yeah. They I know tonight's going to hurt their numbers a little bit because everybody in the bullpen pitched and it's a 10-1 game, but I think we know that that's a result of it being what it is. It's a bullpen game. Right. So, ultimately it comes down to what you do in tight games, and this bullpen's now built for that. So really well done by Dave Dombrowski. All right, let's jump to another B+ on that one. Yeah. So this will be the last one that I have, unless between now and then someone else comments. But this is from Mike Graybill, a guy I used to work with at one of my previous schools. Playoff postseason baseball is all about pitching. We got a must-need third pitcher. He has pitched in New York, so he has the right mindset for Philly. The additional arm in the pen and depth with a middle infielder and young outfielder serve us well this year and in the future. Team control also makes this look better than the rental type deals. So, the Phillies got 2 rentals and 2 long-term pieces here. And he kind of mentioned exactly what we just talked about and what we're going to talk about. I was about to say, Pitching we're about to jump into that third starter. So, yeah. The last trade of the day. Yeah. Noah Syndergaard for Mickey Moniak and Jadiel Sanchez. Mm-hmm. So let's hear your thoughts on this one. I know we liked Mickey. It was a shame that he had to get hurt right at the end of spring training there. Yeah. He was really on a tear. Yeah. Obviously, we kind of expected him to fill that center field role, but it just didn't happen. And now, unfortunately, he's gone. We wish him the best. Good luck in Los Angeles or Anaheim, wherever the hell the Angels are now. Yeah. But what were your thoughts on this one, bud? I think we'll start there. It just never worked with me. Yeah, it's a shame. It just never worked. So, he'll go to Los Angeles. He'll probably play left field a bulk of the time now. Yep. They're going to see what happens there. I feel badly for the kid. I mean, that's a tough draft. There was really no one there at that pick. They went with him hoping that the potential would hit, and it never did. Kid just can't hit a breaking ball to save his life. Yeah. So, unfortunately, sorry, Mick. All the best to him, though. All the best. I really hope he has a successful career. I hope he at least turns into something. Go learn from Mike Trout and do what you got to do. I mean, listen, where players go to die, Anaheim. Yeah. Jadiel Sanchez is intriguing, though. The Phillies took him in the 12th round back in 2019. He was leading Clearwater in exit velocity, so there's a lot of contact there. Hits the ball pretty hard.
he has the potential to be an everyday player, but he's got a long way to go too. Like it's not a guy who's going to fly up your system. He wasn't even in the Phillies top 30 on MLB Pipeline. I don't believe he was there in Baseball America when I glanced today either. I know very little about Jadiel Sanchez other than just what I looked up stat wise, and where he ranks in Clearwater.
Which might need to be all you need to know. If you don't know about him, then
I think this is where the deal was centered around.
Yeah.
Truly. Like I think that it's on the potential of Jadiel Sanchez. I mean, it's a rental, and honestly, in my opinion, I think Syndergaard was the best rental starter out there. And it turns out that 15 minutes before the deadline, according to Dombrowski, the Angels called and said, what will you give us for Syndergaard?
Wow.
Because they wanted to, what are they going to do after this year? He's going to walk. And they knew the Phillies desperately needed another starter with Eflin going on the shelf. So they called him, and Dombrowski said, I'll give you a Moniak, and we'll give you one of these, younger prospects. And here we are with Noah Syndergaard. I don't know, man. To me, this is probably the most meh move of everything. I've been hanging around a C+, B-, but I think like that could change based on the way that Syndergaard pitches for the Phillies the rest of the way. He's been pitching in a 6-man rotation. Some of that was to protect him. Some of that is to protect Ohtani. And he's made 15 starts this year. 12 of them were on 6 or more days rest.
I saw that.
3 of them were on 5. The Phillies are going to need him to go on 5 days rest.
Yeah, I was about to say. Yep.
I mean, there might be times where they can kind of move things around to get him on 6 days. But for the most part, he's going to be pitching on 5 days rest.
Why does he need the extra day? Do we know?
Well, he just came off Tommy John. This is his first year off Tommy John. Mm-hmm. So I think the Angels were really trying to protect him. Does he need that? I don't know. Did the Angels just help the Phillies because now, he's only thrown 80 innings.
Right?
Yeah. So, 80 innings at this point in the year. They were looking at Carlos Rodon. He's thrown 123 innings this year.
Right.
So, I mean, the Phillies could try and protect him a little bit, just limit his innings a little bit, then really unleash him come playoff time if they wanted to. Or they just let him go with it. So through 80 innings this year, let's just look at some of the numbers. A 3.83 ERA. Opponents are hitting like 230, 240 off of him. 8.3 strikeouts per 9, 2 walks per 9. 1.1 homer per 9. Fielding independent pitching is 3.95. Barrel rate 8.1 off of them. Hard hit balls 35%. So nothing that like jumps out. I could see the hard hit balls maybe come down a little bit.
Yeah.
But he's got 5 pitches. He goes fastball, sinker, cutter, change, slider. Pretty much ranges about 80 to 95 with those pitches. Throws the sinker the most, about 26% of the time. Definitely not what he was when he was a Met.
Not the fireball. Nope.
Yeah. But I think that's okay. If the sinker's heavy, it's going to be tough. This is the one that it's out of Dave's wheelhouse to do this. Both Robertson and Syndergaard are not his typical move. He's more of a control type trade guy. Like last year, he traded for Gibson, who had a year.
Yep. And
he traded for Ian Kennedy, who did not. I think he had an option, or there was something there that the Phillies could decide what to do. So control is usually what you see him do. But I think what this does for the Phillies is it gives them a couple of options moving into next year. I think it's a sure bet that Eflin is off the team next year. Now, if he comes back at the end of August, like they think he can, he's on the 60-day IL now. But then for the stretch run through September, the Phillies, could essentially say, "Hey, we're gonna go 6-man rotation." I forget like what their schedule looks like come September, but they could go 6-man rotation at that point and save Syndergaard a little bit if Eflin's healthy enough. And I think that's fine because those 6, that looks pretty good.
Yeah.
If you're rolling out those 6 guys, If you're going Wheeler, Nola, Suarez, Syndergaard, Eflin, healthy Eflin, and Gibson, that's pretty darn good. Not many teams can boast 6 starters like that.
Yeah.
But the Phillies needed a proven major league starter, and Noah Syndergaard is a proven major league starter. And if he can just be even 80% of what Noah Syndergaard used to be, then the Phillies are getting a pretty darn good battle-tested arm moving into the stretch run here. So this one I'm hanging in that B- C+ range, but I think it has the potential to really help them out, and I think he still met a need. With 15 minutes of the deadline, he didn't have it.
Yeah, right.
And he ended up getting it for not a lot.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to the most exciting thing that happened during the deadline. The DFA of Odubel Herrera and Jeurys Familia. Azzy.
Yeah.
Our prayers were answered.
Yeah.
We'd never have to see these two play for the Phillies ever again.
How about it?
I mean,
how about it?
Arguably the most exciting thing that happened today.
Yeah,
we don't have to spend too long on this. We just had to mention it.
Yeah, let me just start with Odubel real quickly. I mean, that what a sad fall from grace Odubel Herrera had.
Yeah.
The guy was an all-star. I know he had his lapses.
Self-inflicted, but
yep. He had a split fan base. He had people who were in the supportive Odubel fan base and the people who are not. Until what happened with the domestic piece, I was in the supportive Odubel.
You were
part of the fan base. Turned on him after that, but unfortunately, the guy made mistakes and I think mentally never recovered. And here we are. So certainly upgrade defensively. We'll see about the offense. Odubel, when he was hot, was really tough to get out, but it's been a while since we've seen that. The Familia thing, again, kind of in the same boat with the domestic end of things, but it was interesting to hear some of his teammates talk about him today.
They love him, apparently.
Yeah, apparently a really good teammate.
So listen, I don't think we ever spoke about the man. We always spoke about purely performance. Yes.
Yeah. You just stunk out of the bullpen.
Yeah.
But there's something to be said for still being a good teammate when you stink.
Yeah. Good for him.
And hearing Zach Wheeler talk about it, I don't know if you heard the broadcast tonight, but Amaro talked about it a little bit too.
Yep.
How when he was in New York, every player loved him, and we heard a lot about how he helped young guys in the bullpen like Sir Anthony. But here's the part that I said to someone else: you're not losing that by bringing David Robertson here.
Right.
Like that's not going anywhere.
There might not be the personal connection that like Wheeler had with Familia or things like that, but.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have that with guys like Didi, and you're going to have that, with guys like Nick Nelson who have played with him, or have been in camp with him. But, he's going to go in that bullpen and be the same type of veteran presence that Jeurys Familia was.
Yeah.
And this is a guy who pitched with the greatest closer of all time. So, hopefully I'm rooting for Robertson. And look, if Familia ends up with the Mets and wants to stink there too, that's fine.
Yeah, please do. We'd appreciate it. All right, bud.
But I mean, whatever, he's gone.
I think we're reaching our time for our good emergency podcast, but let's tie it all together. I don't mean to pigeonhole you into a Phixated, but I think if you want to wrap it up with your feelings moving forward with this team based on all the trades we just discussed, I think it'd be a good sort of wrap up for the fans out there on how we feel about this team now that everything is done and this is the team we're looking to ride into the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of do a twofold Phixated here. I'm going to do part one on the Dombrowski thing, and I'll do part two on where I think we head. So let me just start with Dombrowski real quickly. So Ben Brown, Logan O'Hoppe, and Jadiel Sanchez, 33rd round, 23rd round, 12th round. All Matt Klentak picks, by the way. Yep. So interesting there, but player development, huge, because you're looking at guys who are not picked high in the draft. So clearly they're like diamonds in the rough in that sense, because not many guys have been produced from those rounds, but hopefully that's a sign of what's to come from this player development group. And then Moniak. So Brown, O'Hoppe, and Moniak would have all had 40-man spots next year. They would have had to, or, Rule 5, they could have been taken in the Rule 5 draft.
Yep.
So this is what I talked about earlier in the podcast with Dave Dombrowski and the forethought that this guy has, because he cleared 3 40-man spots by dumping Brown, Ohapi, and Moniak. Because he was going to have a crunch. He's got to get Rojas on there next year. He's got to get Eric Miller on there next year, or they're both going to be out in the Rule 5, and they will both get taken if they're in the Rule 5. So the forethought there to get rid of guys that he knew he couldn't really protect. Same thing with Jojo Romero, cleared a 40-man spot there too. To add pieces that they needed presently and for the future just goes to show you why this guy's probably going to be a Hall of Famer one day. He filled 4 holes, Regz.
Yeah.
4 holes without giving up any of their top 3 prospects or Johan Rojas, who I'm incredibly high on. He didn't give up Hao Yu Lee, who I think is probably the most exciting hitter in the organization, or soon to be. And I know teams had to be calling on him. And he was probably demanded in a couple of the trades for pitchers. Still kept depth pieces like Jalen Ortiz, Simon Muzziotti, Nick Maton. He kept Marchand. He kept Donnie Sands. And ultimately kept McGarry, Abel, and Painter. All 3 of whom could be up here in the next year or two. McGarry and Painter absolutely could be up here in the next year or two. We'll see what happens with Abel. I just think this deadline for Dombrowski I loved it. I absolutely loved it. If I were doing the poll, I loved it, and I give it an A- at worst, on paper.
All right.
Which leads me to where I go with where this team's heading. They have the schedule and the talent to finish this job. It's going to come down to whether or not they can do what they haven't been able to do for the last 3 years, because they've been in it every year the last 3 years and haven't been able to close the deal. But it's all in front of them. Like, the schedule is there in front of them. The tiebreakers are there in front of them. They just have to win.
Gene's coming back.
Gene's coming
Bryce
back
will
Thursday.
be back at the end of the month.
Bryce will be back by the end of August. They're even saying he could be back by like the second week of August. And we just need them to be even like 60% of what they usually are.
Yep.
And we're in good shape because the rest of the guys are doing it. This, to me, Regz, I think we're finally going to get there. And trust me, when they do, there will be an emergency pod. I don't care
There will absolutely
what time of day it is.
Nope.
I don't care I don't care where I am. We are doing a podcast when the Phillies are a playoff team. Dave Dombrowski did enough today to make this team a playoff team. This roster is deep. It's talented. The staff is deep. It's talented. And this bullpen is the best it's been in a long time. I know they got their doors blown off tonight.
No,
Forget it.
That is what it is.
Forget it. You got 4 with the Nationals this weekend.
Nick
Hopefully
Nelson
you win
starting
Wheeler.
a game is not. We're back to the Girardi.
Against Strider. Get out of here.
13 Ks tonight.
Hopefully they steal the Wheeler start tomorrow. You split in Atlanta and you walk away feeling good about it. And then you go for 4 in Washington and you get 3 with the Marlins after that. You do what you should do in those next 7 and you're going to be in a good spot because the Cardinals have to go deal with the Yankees this weekend.
Yeah.
So, and that's not an easy team to deal with right now.
No, it's
so Regz, at the end of the day, what I'm saying is Dave Dombrowski, future Hall of Famer, love you. Great day today. Phillies are a playoff team. Let's go. I love you, Brendan Marsh.
I love
Be
it.
my friend.
I love it. Hey, you never know. Maybe we get him on soon.
One day.
One day.
Do I have to close the show out tonight, or do you do it since you were basically hosting it?
I don't know. I mean, I can close it out. Why not? I haven't done this in a while. We'll give it a shot.
You go for it.
All right. Why not? So,
Yeah.
obviously, a huge shout out to Azzy for all this information. People, this is why you listen to this show, because this man is so smart about this stuff. This is why I text him constantly. This is why I always reach out to him when stuff like the Soto thing happens, because he always gives the greatest context to all the things that are happening in sports in general. I know we're a Philly sports podcast, but sometimes you just have to talk about everything. A great dive into the Phillies trade deadline, our first emergency pod. You freaking killed it, Azzy, and I love you, and we'll continue to do this for the rest of time because we're not stopping this podcast. So, everyone out there, this one is recorded on YouTube. Click that big red button underneath the video. Subscribe. We're still at 21. We need to get to that quarter century mark. We need to get to 25. Give it to us. We need it. All you people out there on the fan page, if you're subscribed to the fan page, you can be subscribed to the YouTube channel. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. So make sure you follow us at B&B Podcast on Twitter, B&B Podcast on Instagram. Follow at the Mic Drop 5 on Twitter. Follow Phixated Pod on Twitter. I don't have to give mine out anymore because I did it once and I'm done.
Regz.
So you're not getting
With
it.
a Z.
Ah, damn it. He did it anyway. Just follow everything, all of us. We're still working. We're going to get some merch coming up. We got a new logo that we'll be rolling out soon. Can't wait for that. We're going to throw it on some merch. That's the last big effort for the year for this podcast. The numbers for the downloads and the views on YouTube have been amazing. We can't thank you guys enough for listening, watching, tuning in, wherever and whenever you do. Please enjoy the rest of your night. We will be back on Thursday to talk Eagles. A crazy amount of football happening on Thursday. You're going to get a double dose of the Phixated Pod this week. So I hope you all enjoy it. A huge shout out to Azzy again. Thank you all for listening and watching, and we will catch you in just a few days. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
Oh my God! Deep to right field, way up there and way out of here.
The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you.
The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.